Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 289 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 17 of A Dance with Dragons, which is Jon 4.
And as always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we are going to spoil things for you. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I know you have some news that's either going to be really good or really bad. And I've been waiting. We intentionally waited to do this while recording.
Yes, we do. So I'm hot foot from watching Oldham Athletic in the semi-final of the playoffs to get out of their accursed league, and I haven't told Mackelly the result. Oldham were away from home against the team that finished second in the league, who finished 23 points above Oldham in the league.
Wow.
And played a head-to-head game with us, and one of those went home, and Oldham crushed them 3-0.
Yes! Woo! All right.
And I haven't had anything to drink because I had to book a plane ticket to England there and then, and I didn't want to do that with drink in me and think to the next day, what the hell was I thinking? So I have booked my flight back to England to watch the last game.
You told me this morning that you were going to do it if they won, so I'm not caught off guard by this part, but that's very exciting all around. So, I'm excited for you to
Jenny,
go. So
Jenny, if you're listening...
We're tapping you on the shoulder.
the bat signal has to go up.
Right. Well, that is good news.
It was incredibly exciting. How big was this? I mean, I've said before, Oldham are terrible, but we are a big fish in that particular pond. We have fallen into a pond so small that we have become a big fish. Yeah,
a puddle.
Oldham sold out its ticket allocation for this game in an instant, and they put big screens on at the Oldham ground for the Oldham fans to watch it. That's how big of a team we are for this amateur division that we're in. And we've won the 2 rounds of the playoff. We've won 4-0 and 3-0. So we couldn't be in better form than we are right this second. So
that's right. So what's the plan now? You have to win this next game and you're through.
That's it. Okay. So this game is at the National Stadium with a capacity of 100,000, and if we win it, we move up a division next season. We'll be playing in the real divisions again.
All right. I'll be pulling for you like I was today. I intentionally at one point I thought I should check in, and then I was like, no, I don't want to jinx anything. I
was beyond talking to people. I was so nervous. I ground my teeth. I could feel my fillings popping out. I was grinding my teeth so badly.
Perfect for a Stannis chapter.
Even at 3-0, I was like... Because, do you know what? I dreamt last night that I was watching ESPN, which is strange because I don't have ESPN, so I don't know how I was watching ESPN.
It's a dream. And you could do those things.
The ticker along the bottom ruined the game for me, which was also weird because I was planning to watch the game live, so there was no way the game could get ruined for me. But would you believe it said there was a 3-3 tie and York won on penalties? It woke me up in a cold sweat. I was like, right. Oh
no! It was just a dream. It was just a dream. Well, that's great.
What's going on with you?
For you. Yeah, we're back to being having a
quiet house.
Chick in the nest. A chick in the nest, whatever a baby bird is called. We're no longer empty nest.
Oh no, that's right. They're back for the summer, or at least one of them is.
One of them is, yes. So that's nice. But I wanted to quickly give a shout out to one of our OG listeners from. So Ethan's basically best friend since birth, a young man named Noah, has been listening since we started.
I don't know Noah well, but I'm very grateful to Noah for being such a long-term listener.
I know. He's affectionately known around the house as Doa, because that's how Ethan said his name when they were babies. I just wanted to shout out that he graduated with his master's from University of Oklahoma this past week. So he's a geologist. Noah. His degree has something to do with rocks and water, I believe.
Yeah, probably.
So congratulations, Doa. We are all very proud of you.
Well, congratulations, man. That's great. Yeah, congrats.
In other family news, my sister-in-law has been listening. Stacy's sister.
Oh yeah. I love Stacy's sister.
Yes, you have met her. Yes, you have. Yeah. And she has been filling Stacy in on our topics of conversation.
Ooh, that's breaking the contract. Our wives don't listen because they have no interest. Don't tell them what we say.
And some of the time, she got to the story she got to the episode where I told the story about how Stacy loves to play pranks on people and how she pranked her sister by telling her they won the lottery when she was in the bath, and she came running down all excited, and it was all a big joke. And apparently they have a disagreement on how the details of that event went. So I'll let them hash that out at the next family gathering.
Is it the details or whether or not that was funny?
I guarantee they have different sides on whether that was funny or not.
I would think so.
So yeah.
My other story from this week is a tale of ineptitude. I'm trying to eat healthier. I've lost a bit of weight, as you know.
All right.
And,
yes.
I have oatmeal for breakfast, and the oatmeal is in a high cabinet over the stove, and it comes in like a drum canister kind of thing.
Yep. I've seen.
And I just opened a new one, and I'm not the tallest, as you're aware, Mackelly, so I had to really reach up to get this thing, And I got my hand on top of it, and I pulled it towards me, but I pulled the top off, and I pulled the canister, and the canister then tipped.
From a top shelf.
To say oatmeal rained down on me, to do it a disservice. It was a blizzard, a tsunami of oatmeal.
Well, the good news is you didn't have to make your oatmeal. You ate it on the fly.
I found a piece of oatmeal in my left ear like half an hour later. The bit that made me laugh the most was like I cleared up in front of me and off my hair kind of thing. It was all over the stove, and I cleared it all up. And then I turned around, and the floor was absolutely covered in it, apart from a shadow that I'd cast where I stood. There was
it was like a chalk drawing of you on the floor. A detective would come in and say, "Someone was standing right here, approximately this tall." Well, hey, it made for a funny story.
Yeah,
you got that.
Why I do these things.
That's right.
All right, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jon Snow? Last time we saw Jon, he was witnessing the execution of Mance Rayder, letting the wildling host through the wall, earning yet more animosity from Alistair Thorne and company. He was finding himself further distanced from his friends, and he was considering how Stannis' Lightbringer doesn't radiate heat the way Azor Ahai's was reputed to. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Jon and Ed join Lord Stewart Bowen Marsh and Wick Whittlestick in the Wormways, the tunnels underneath Castle Black that are used when the snows get too cumbersome for traversing the castle above ground during the winter. The point of this meeting is to examine the food stores laid aside for the winter. Marsh gives Jon a historical count from 3 turns ago for comparison. They make their way through granaries, root cellars, and storerooms filled with items ranging from wheat to wheels of cheese to salted meat, and pretty much any other food you can imagine.
As they moved through the tunnels, it got colder and colder, and Jon realised that he's under the wall. And soon thereafter, they're actually inside the wall itself. A tunnel in the ice running as long as the Great Hall of Winterfell is stuffed with what Jon figures is enough meat to feed the world. Marsh thinks otherwise. His tally of their food reserve is worse than he feared. The summer was long, and the Northern Lords were generous with their contributions. However, feeding Stannis' army and now the wildling horde has taken its toll. Marsh figures that they will be down to turnips and peas porridge before year's end.
He suggests a series of actions, including going on winter rations despite it only being autumn. Jon agrees to cut each man's portions by a quarter, knowing full well how poorly that will be received by his brothers. The war makes getting food from elsewhere a challenge, and they have no gold to buy it. Jon considers the Vale of Arryn as an option, as it was the kingdom least touched by the war, and he wonders how Catelyn Stark's sister would feel about feeding Ned Stark's bastard.
Jon returns to his rooms in the armoury to find Devon Seaworth waiting, frozen in fear. Seems that Ghost has not exactly rolled out the welcome mat, sniffing the boy up and down. Jon calls the wolf off, and Devon explains that the king commands his presence. Sirs Massey and Horp have returned. Jon recalls the Wrong Way Rangers and is curious to hear what they learned. Devon leads Jon to the king's solar.
The chamber is crowded with Queen's men, with the king, Melisandre, Seagorn, the new Magnor of Fen, and Rattleshirt rounding out the room. The fact that no king's men surround the king is not lost on Jon. Rattleshirt makes a snide remark about brave Jon killing a bound and caged Mance raider. Stannis presents Rattleshirt as a gift to Jon. He had asked for more men, and the king is delivering. Melisandre explains to the perplexed Jon that the ruby on the manacle the man wears makes him completely under her control. Therefore, Jon can trust him fully.
Jon can trust him fully. Stannis asks Jon about Mors Umber. It seems the co-castellan of Last Hearth has pledged himself to Stannis, with some conditions. He wants Mance's skull as a drinking cup, and he will not, under any circumstances, take up arms against his brother Hother, who has sided with the Boltons. He also wants a pardon for his brother for backing Roose Bolton and the Lannisters. Jon thinks this is a big win for Stannis, and the king should accept. Sir Godfrey Faring, aka Giant Slayer, scoffs, saying agreeing to these terms makes the king look weak. Instead, they should burn Last Hearth and ride to war with Mor's head on a spear.
Jon retorts that that's a fine plan, if what they want is all of the North against them. Jon ventures that the Umbers are only backing the Boltons because the Lannisters have the Great Jon captive. He asks if other houses have joined the Boltons. Melisandre says she had a vision in the flames of a town of wood, where above the wooden walls flew banners with a moose, battle axe, 3 pine trees, crossed long axe beneath a crown, and a horse head with fiery eyes. Jon explains that 2 of those houses are tied to the Boltons by marriage, and the rest have lost their lords in the war.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Stannis tells Jon he plans to ride on the Dreadfort. The news stuns Jon, and his shock heartens the king. If that plan surprises one bastard, maybe it'll surprise another. Mors Umber and Arnulf Karstark both report that Ramsay Bolton has left the Dreadfort. Stannis figures that that's to remove the Ironborn from Moat Cailin and free up his father's path to return to the north. Karstark has the added intelligence that the castle at Dreadfort is lightly held, mostly by household staff. Therefore, Stannis plans to take the castle while it's unattended and occupy it before Roose returns.
"You won't," is all Jon blurts out. The statement causes chaos throughout the room, with most calling him a coward. Stannis silences the room and asks for clarification. Jon explains that if Stannis doesn't meet Mors Umber's demands, he'll never make it through their lands without being cut to pieces. If he does appease Mors, he'll never get through the Bolton lands and take the castle before the Boltons are notified. Regardless of the small garrison at the castle, Stannis can't take it in time before the Boltons return, and their combined strength will outnumber Stannis's 5-1.
Massey contends that the Karstarks will join them, and they'll have the wildlings as their van. Stannis wants Jon to provide weapons and armour for the 300 wildlings riding into battle. Jon feels he's getting close to crossing the line from offering advice to taking part in the wars of the realm, which the Night Watch has a vow against doing. He offers 300 spears and some old rusty helms. However, he adds that riding through the north with wildlings in his van is a good way to turn all of Ned Stark's bannermen against him.
Stannis kicks out everyone but Jon and Melisandre. In private, he confides that Massey and Horp aspire to Winterfell. He asks Jon which he prefers, and Jon says the castle belongs to his sister Sansa. Stannis is tired of hearing that and says it's not too late for Jon to undo his folly, bend his knee, and be named Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Once again, Jon is forced to reject the ever-tempting offer. Stannis thinks he'll name Arnulf Karstark as Lord of Winterfell then, but Jon says he'd do better to name Mors Umber. Jon asks about the Manderleys. Stannis considers White Harbor lost to him, as there's been no word from Davos, presumed lost at sea.
Jon makes Stannis an offer. Leave the wildlings behind at Castle Black, and he will tell Stannis where he can find 3,000 swords. Stannis is suspicious of a trick, but asks Jon to explain. Jon tells Stannis of the northern mountain clans. As many as 40 clans live in the mountainous regions south of the Gift. Jon can provide escorts to their lands. If Stannis can woo them and ask for, not command, their help, Jon feels confident that they will agree. Jon adds that rather than turn toward the Dreadfort with his new force, he should reclaim Deepwood Motte from the Ironborn. Stannis likes the idea. He's defeated the wildling army already. If he can smash the Ironborn as well, the North will know they have a true king, and Jon will have 1,000 more wildling mouths to feed, and no way of doing so. Just before we start, who accused Jon of killing Mance Rayder?
Rattleshirt.
Rattleshirt did.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Where is that? I remember you reading.
It's...
Rattleshirt makes a snide remark about brave Jon. Okay. That's not... I was going to put it in the pedantry because I was like, who in the hell in that room would say that to Jon when the person who killed Mance Rayder is actually King Stannis sitting right there? But I guess Rattleshirt doesn't give a rat's, you know.
Right, yeah.
I'll just send some blame. So, I mean, first part of the chapter is the sort of state of the supplies at the wall. I got to say, I feel like Bowen Marsh may have been a bit derelict in his duties. Yeah, there's been some turmoil, but they have had less mouths to feed recently until they got a lot more mouths to feed.
True. Yeah.
Because the Great Ranging took away a lot of the thing. So
yes,
why is it in such a state? It seems like they should be ahead of the curve, or at least they should have been ahead of the curve until Stannis
balanced
arrived.
Out. Right. I guess the issue comes in the force that Stannis brought with him and the wildlings that they've let through the wall. I guess, 1,000 mouths to feed. Is that what the line is? Something along that
That's
lines.
A lot. No doubt. I mean, they're probably, 200 short of what they were the Night's Watch from the Great Ranging. Yeah, they're probably down something like 200.
Yes. It's 200 and something. Yeah.
So they're 5 times as many as that. But you see what I mean, though? It's orders of magnitude. It's not that much more. It just feels like that they're going to be down to peas porridge by the end of the year. What kind of winter were they planning on? I mean, historically, long summers herald long winters. So they needed to have a lot laid by, and they don't seem to have got to that. I don't know. Just feel...
He says, Bowen Marsh, he gives a bit of a calculation. He says, before we had enough to supply us for 4 years. Now we're down to not even making it through the end of the year. And we're a decent chunk of the way through the year. So we're down to several months of food left before they're down to peas, porridge, and turnips. So that is quite the quick reduction of food stores.
Yeah, but maybe he's right. I mean, if they only had 100 in the Night's Watch at Castle Black, and now they've got 1,100 to feed. That's 10 times as much, and so that would get through your stores a lot quicker. Yeah, maybe I'm being just a bit unfair, but it just feels like they should have been ahead of this curve, and
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Funny enough, actually, I've just been reading about Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition aboard the Endurance. They were planning to go across the Antarctic from one side to the other, and the ship, the Endurance, got caught in the ice, and they had to stay on the ship for the entire Antarctic winter. But they managed to get a bunch of food by killing seals, because the seals came up on the ice for protection, because the seals were very afraid of killer whales, orcas. That's their natural enemy in the water. So when they're on the ice, they're completely safe and they're relaxed. And the sailors could just walk up to them and shoot them.
Oh, wow.
They were completely not afraid of the sailors. And they said,
I
think they said they got 5,000 pounds of meat from seal.
Oh my. Wow.
Which, they were going to be trapped on this boat for the whole of an Antarctic winter, so they really needed it. But it made me think, well, that's one, at least the coastal castles could maybe have something similar.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad idea. Yeah. I mean, Bay of Seals.
Exactly. One of them is in the Bay of Seals. Yeah, right. You'd like to imagine.
There's a seal or two out there.
Yes. Last winter we went a little bit over the top, and now it's just called the Bay of Nothing.
It's just the Bay now. But you're right.
Every room is just like bedecked in seal fur.
When those brothers from that castle, from I guess it's Eastwatch, they show up. They're all decked out, head to toe in seal fur. Seal long johns.
Occasionally one of them gets butchered to death by one of his buddies, thinking it's one of the last remaining seals.
Anyway, where were we? We were talking about famine.
Yeah, I mean, the war is the nightmare scenario for the Night's Watch, because they rely on that lordly charity, because they don't have gold to spend on things, so stuff has to just come to them. They do get a lot from the gift, but that's kind of some grain, some venison type thing, you'd imagine. The Vale is a good thought by Jon, but here's my problem with getting food from the Vale. First of all, what do? You send a raven and say, hey, look, we're going to get really hungry here at the wall, send some food. If the Vale has a surplus, which it very well might, because it's the one place that has been untouched by the war, it's going to have a lot of people clamoring for that surplus, and they're going to pay high dollar for it, and the Night's Watch isn't. So
they don't have the gold to pay high dollar.
What you need is the person in charge in the Vale to be someone who cares more about other people than he does about profit. Who's in charge in the Vale?
That does not work well. That doesn't fit your. That could be a problem.
That's unfortunate.
The Reach has also been mostly unaffected.
True.
But they've already been providing food to the refugees of the Riverlands in King's Landing, and now they've been affected by the Ironborn raiding, so far mostly along the coast, but...
True. You also feel that the Reach, unless the winter gets very bad, they don't have winter as bad as the North does. They could still keep growing some things. I mean, I began to think about that. The nature of this world is, I think, look, I'm not criticizing George Martin. Good God, it's created an amazing world. But I would think that people would be more nomadic if this was the way the world worked.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yeah, Northerners would move south to the Reach area when it got cold so that they wouldn't starve.
Right, because especially if you don't know how long the winter's going to be. Here on our planet, you know how long the winter's going to be. You can set aside enough food to get you through it, and spring will come at the same time every year.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep, that's how it works.
Pretty much, right. But in this world, winter can last an extra couple of years longer than you thought, so you can't ever put aside enough food to be sure. And you can never know, as you're getting through the food, how you're doing. Oh, that's good. We've only eaten half of it, but we don't know how long winter's going to last. So I just feel like the world would be more nomadic than it is.
That is true. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I have a crazy idea I thought about when Bowen Marsh was talking about how they're going to be down to drinking the blood of their own horses, and that the war is preventing them from having food sent up the King's Road. And we've just been talking about how, the Riverlands and other places are, going to be in a real pickle here because they haven't been putting enough food aside. And I wondered if the long night and the great other, could it be a metaphorical thing, and that the long night is brought on by the selfishness of war over preparing for the winter? Not enough food to last a long, harsh winter.
You said war over preparing, not war over preparing for winter.
Right. War instead
more than preparing for the winter.
When they should have been preparing, they were burning crops and fighting.
Well, I honestly think that probably most people outside of the North think that the long night, and if they even think of the great other, which I don't think they even do, but they would see those as metaphors for bad winters, and it's kind of like it's not a person boogeyman, it's just a sort of general boogeyman of, oh dear, we better set aside things. But you're absolutely right. It meets its perfect sort of like manifestation when war takes away those surpluses. You've left yourself vulnerable to exactly the thing that you were warned against all these generations.
Starvation, stealing, murdering to find enough food to survive. It's going to make for a long, dark winter, even if it's not due to a supernatural creature.
Here's the thing. The wildlings live north of the wall. They're used to providing for themselves. I just don't see why you just don't give them... You say, look, we can't feed you, but this is rich, fertile land. Do what you want.
Yeah, I guess they're afraid of pillaging and...
Yeah, if you see animals inside of a pen, those are not to be hunted because they belong to someone.
If you could convince them of that, you might be onto something.
Yeah, that is the problem for sure. So... Anyway, so yes, worried about the stores, definitely a problem, and some great pedantry still to come.
Okay,
so wait on that, and it's store related pedantry.
And I have not looked. You told me don't look at pedantry, so I will
spring it on you like I did with the Oldham score. The Wrong Way Rangers have returned. Jon was very curious about their mission, so he's kind of he goes to Stannis with a little spring in his step more than he usually does.
The Wrong Way Rangers, that is Richard Horp, and I'm going to call him Thorpe. I know, because in my mind I keep calling him Thorpe, but it's Richard Horp and Justin Massey.
I think his middle initial is T, so maybe
Richard Thomas Horp. Tywin dubbed them the Wrong Way Rangers when they saw them riding off. But, it was never made clear what exactly they learned.
Yes.
They're very much in favor of attacking the lightly held Dreadfort, so it's likely they received info from Arnulf Karstark and passed that information along. That's what they've learned.
That's what I assumed was their intelligence. And also, didn't we hear a little bit from White Harbour as well?
They haven't heard from White Harbour. That's
right. They haven't heard anything from White Harbour. That's why it gets a mention. Right. That's right. So now Stannis is worried, and he says this in front of Devon. By the way, he says that he's very worried that Davos is lost at sea.
He does. You're right.
Another glass of that, please.
I forgot that Devon was in the room because he kicks everybody out before he says that part. But Devon is still there.
Exactly. It says he kicks everybody out, well, apart from Jon and Melisandre and Devon.
Right.
Place is packed.
Goodness.
It would have been easier to say, Rattleshirt, get out of here. You know?
Right. Just you. You and the Magnar beat it.
Everybody out. Everybody apart from Rattleshirt, ignore that.
Right. But he also mentions that Horp and Massey both have designs on Winterfell, and that Massey not only has designs on Winterfell, but also has designs on Val, Winterfell plus Val. So quite ambitious for
so.
Justin Massey. And that Horp, I found this interesting. Horp wanted to be a Kingsguard, but Cersei spoke against him.
Yes.
And I thought that was a
did it
noteworthy detail.
I'm racking my brains on that now.
Just the fact that the only detail we got is that he loves battle too much, and
right,
and
he was less of a bodyguard, more of a fighter. Yeah.
Yes, it was probably best that Robert passed him over because he likes to kill too much. And I wondered, that wouldn't bother Cersei. She wouldn't care about that. No. So what was it?
Too friendly with Robert?
Maybe they did. The description did say that his face is ravaged with pockmarks and scars, and I wonder if maybe Cersei is so vain she disliked his look for someone that's going to be around her all day and night.
Yeah.
But Boris Blunt is not exactly an Adontis either.
True, good point.
He's still around, so...
So Stannis has brought 2 wildlings into his small council, it seems. Oh, not small council, I mean...
Right.
They're not Devon, you know.
Right. They don't get this intimate level of information.
Yeah. But Sigurd and Rattleshirt were privy to a lot of the conversation here, so he's trusting them to a certain extent.
I guess. It seems like Sigurd has found a way to kind of buddy up to the king a
because
bit.
He's not wearing the ruby dog collar.
Right. Yeah, when I first read it, I read it as manacles, plural. And I thought, because they present him like a gift to Jon, like, you wanted more men, here we go, we're delivering you this one man in handcuffs. And I was like, well, he's completely useless if the whole time he has to be in handcuffs to be in her control. But I think it is a single manacle.
Yeah, I believe so.
Kind of like in a removable charm bracelet.
Yeah, or like Wonder Woman.
Yes, right. With a ruby in it that
exactly. So just
controlled by. Yes. But regardless, Jon asked for more men to help garrison castles. And so far at this point, they gave him one man who is despised by all Night's Watch brothers and many of his own wildlings. So
good point.
But Jon says something odd. Melisandre says to him that you can trust Rattleshirt fully because he's under my control as long as he has that ruby on him. The flames don't lie. And Jon thinks to himself, the flames might not, but you do. And I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to as far as what
specific lie he feels she's told. Well, is he thinking back to Lightbringer?
Oh, yes, that is probably it. Yes, because he read that little passage about about the fact that it should burn warm, and maybe he is suspicious about Lightbringer and thinks she's involved. Yeah, that could be it. Good answer. I like it. I meant to throw that out to our sustainers on the Sustainer channel of the Discord server, but I never got around to, and then I ran out of time. So I like your answer, though.
No, you don't need to bother. You heard it from the source. I honestly would not have come up with that had we not mentioned it 10 minutes ago.
I like it. What was quick work?
Got very lucky there.
I think it makes sense.
I do wonder, actually, if Melisandre's kind of, there's a sort of like a double-edgedness to this gift of Rattleshirt. I mean, it's not a very useful gift to begin with.
Right.
But it is, she he's under her control as long as nothing happens to her.
Right.
But if something happens to her, then Rattleshirt suddenly is, off the leash and goes crazy, So maybe it's sort of like a protection for herself.
That's true. Yeah. Like a, a hand grenade. As long as you're holding in that lever, you're safe.
Good call. Yes. Yeah. But so one reason she might be doing that. I mean, it's probably nothing. I'm probably reading too much into this, but at the end of the chapter, we didn't mention this in the summary, but Stannis has latched onto the idea of going after the mountain clans, but he says, I'm leaving Melisandre behind. And if she knew this, if she knew she wasn't being invited to the Dreadfort, then maybe she was thinking to herself, what do I need to do to make myself secure here? And having a lunatic wildling that only you can control is probably a good idea.
Right. Little insurance policy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That could be, maybe. Yeah, you might. It probably wasn't, but I like the thought that it could be.
Yeah, because I'm not sure. We didn't really get her reaction to the news that she wasn't going, but it felt like she wouldn't have known this was about to happen.
Yeah, she just said, my place is here at Castle Black.
Oh, yes, she did. So it did feel like she knew a little bit.
Yeah.
So Jon notices that it's all the Queen's men surrounding the king, not the King's men. And I struggle with that a little bit because it feels to me like Jon would not be so attuned to the internal politics of Stannis' court to really recognize that. We could know it as sort of like outside observers being told by George Martin, but it just seems like, how would Jon get that information? The difference is mostly in their adherence to the religion, right? The Queen's men are much more zealous about R'hllor.
The King's men follow Stannis first and foremost. Primary allegiance is in the fact that they believe that he is the true king, and they have not converted to worshipping R'hllor. Think Davos Seaworth and Andrew, Stannis' cousin Andrew Estermont. Queen's men, fervent followers of R'hllor, follow Stannis because they believe he's Azor Ahai, and they're called Queen's men because of Selyse's total zealotry when it comes to R'hllor and Melisandre. Think Axel Florent would be a good example of Queen's men.
So you think that's the case? They're called Queen's men because they share her passion for the religion, not because they owe any kind of special fealty to her. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's just the fact that they believe in R'hllor like Selyse believes in R'hllor.
You see, I thought that those two things were a little bit more interlocked. Like, it was the Florents, i.e. Selyse's family, who were sort of like gravitating towards her camp, and she got fervent about the religion, and so they did too. But
I'm sure there's some of that. There's also, others that aren't related to her that are equally committed. Right. But yeah. So there's probably some overlapping there.
Yeah, I will say that the Queen's men do all seem to be cut from the same cloth as Stannis' worst attributes.
Yeah.
That they have an expectation of fealty because it's demanded, which is it's the worst possible thing for the North. There's no compromise on the religion, and that's where they do differ from Stannis, because he's not like that. But at the same time, he's chopping down, he's making people burn weirwoods. He's not rejecting that. He's the king. He could tell Melisandre that's not happening, but he doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of Stannis's characteristics, I felt like in this chapter there was another example. For all of his rigidity, he does listen to counsel, and that's not been universal regarding lords and kings.
True enough.
He allows himself to be talked out of this plan, attacking the Dreadfort, that he felt so confident in before Jon started to provide him counsel on it. And when the others scoffed and attacked Jon for saying, "You won't take the castle," he quieted them and asked for an explanation and listened and was ultimately swayed. And he's done that back on the Blackwater. The Wrong Way Rangers, Massey and Horp, they convinced him, it's time to give up on this battle. You've lost. You must flee. And
this is the danger of surrounding yourself with the Queen's men, because the Queen's men amplify the worst aspects of Stannis' character. The best attributes of Stannis' character are really good, you know?
Yeah.
And the people who amplify that are the Davoses, the Estemonts, the Jons. The Jon.
Right.
Jon is one who does it. He's bringing out the best in Stannis by questioning him and holding him to this. So those people, the thing that they have in common for me is that they can see the situation needs to drive your behavior, not your your idealized view of what people's behavior should be. You've got to read the situation and then determine things.
Yeah.
And Stannis is capable of it, even though he pretends not to be.
I agree. Yeah. Makes perfect sense to me.
So why are the Umbers going in different directions here? Are they? I mean, because to a certain extent, Mors Umber seems to be saying, "Look, I'll bend the knee to you. You're the king, but I'm not fighting my brother." But his brother's on Team Bolton, so that's a problem if that's where Stannis is going to fight.
Yeah, how did we get here? Was there some sort of disagreement between the brothers, or possibly Hother worries for the Great Jon's life, and Mors is considering the Great Jon dead and wants retribution?
Yeah.
Or possibly did they agree to play both sides? Both ask for pardons for the other half, so neither are executed when one side loses, and they agree to make sure they don't meet on the field.
Interesting. Yeah.
Kind of like a Frey might. A move a Frey might make.
It is a Frey move, but yeah, that's a very good point. They're in a no-lose situation in some respects there.
Right. Yeah, except for the Great Jon might die, but he may or may not die regardless of what his uncles do.
Right, but if the Great Jon dies, then one of these two does is just then turn the table on the other one and say, "No, let's fight them. I've changed my mind."
Right. And the idiot Godry Faring, aka Giant Slayer, he suggests burning Last Hearth and mounting Mors Umber's head on a lance. And I was thinking, the whole time I kept thinking, why is this guy even in the room? He provides no useful counsel at all.
But see, that's the thing. There's a strain of Stannis which is exactly that. You make demands of me before you'll bend the knee? All right, chop his head off and let's carry it on a stick, Let's not think about the consequences of that. Stannis has got some of that in him, for sure.
That's true. Yeah, it's his word. You're right. It's his worst moments, his worst impulses are rigidity like that.
Yeah.
But he also has a way of walking himself back from the edge, I feel like.
So tell me about Melisandre's vision. Because Melisandre's vision was full of sigils and interest, but you're much better at interpreting these tea leaves than I am.
So she has a vision of many banners. I mentioned them in the summary. Flying in a town made of wood, and they're all northern houses that she believes, based on this vision, have declared for the Boltons. And Clayton Suggs calls them all traitors, but I feel like Jon saw a little more nuance in this situation. He points out that, and rightfully so, that many of the lords of the houses that were mentioned had died. That those houses have lost their lords, and that they're he doesn't say this, but you can infer that they're led by unseasoned leaders, if they're led by anybody at this point. And he also mentions that the Ryswells and the Dustons are tied to the Boltons by marriage, and so what he's referring to is Lord Roderick Ryswell has two daughters. Well, had two daughters. Bethany Ryswell is the late wife of Roose Bolton, and Barbary, his other daughter, is the widow of Lord William Dustin. So that's how the Ryswells and the Dustons are both connected to the Boltons through marriage, basically through Bethany being Roose's late wife and the mother of Roose's dead son.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that they're 100% committed to the Boltons and the Lannisters. To me, it's the most obvious path forward versus pledging to this wild card Stannis against the new warden appointed by the crown.
If these are minor houses of the north, they might not have even heard of Stannis yet, I mean, they may not even know he's in the north. I mean,
that's true, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. If you're being led by someone unseasoned, or maybe a castellan who got left in charge, what are you going to do? Might is right in that situation. You're just going to sort of bend the knee to the strongest, scariest looking one that comes along, and that
Yeah.
would be the Boltons right now for sure.
Right. They certainly know the Boltons' history,
Mm-hmm.
and also Roose Bolton is the new Warden of the North, appointed by
Exactly.
the Iron Throne. And we know their role in the Red Wedding, but they don't know the Boltons' role in the Red Wedding. So
Yeah.
they do know that Roose aligned with the Lannisters, who killed both Ned and Robb Stark, which, but like I said, it's the most obvious path forward. He's the new warden, so they're going to follow him, and they're tied to him by marriage. But we will discuss more of Melisandre's vision in spoilers.
Okay, so Stannis wants to ride on the Dreadfort. Supposedly it's going to be held by less than 50 men. Stannis' knights, because they're idiots, are all for it. Jon sees disaster at every turns. Unless they make terms with them, they're never going to make it through the Umberlands alive, especially having a bunch of wildlings in the fore. That's red rag to a bull, and these bulls are very big and strong. But the terms are interesting. He wants Mance's skull as a drinking cup. This is a throwback to some Umber daughter who was kidnapped by the wildlings, right?
Yes, Mor's daughter was carried away by wildlings.
Do we know what happened to her?
30 years ago, she was carried away, and
is she Val?
I don't think. No. Oh, well, depending how old she was when she was carried away, I think she might be too old to be Val.
Okay. Okay. The Umbers won't fight the Umbers. Fair enough. Reasonable. That there's a pardon for his brother Hother. I'm reading this now, and I'm like, wow, Mackelly's right. The Umbers have a plan here. If they agree, they won't get through the Bolton lands undetected, because now they're going to have a large force, including Umbers, and someone's going to say, who'd like to know about that is the Boltons. I'm going to send a raven on ahead, or I'm going to flog my horse faster than they can travel. So that means that Ramsay would be able to cut off their retreat, perhaps, or Ramsay could turn back from, Ramsay can't turn back from Moat Cailin. Ramsay has to go for Moat Cailin now, because otherwise he doesn't open the channel back for his father to support him. So he has to risk losing the Dreadfort.
Yes, but Jon thinks that it's not even going to be a problem. He argues that Ramsay can get to Moat Cailin, remove the Ironborn and let his father through before Stannis can take the Dreadfort.
Yeah.
Because it's vulnerable from the north and the east. It's only the south that it's impregnable from.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah. You're talking Moat Cailin now, not the Dreadfort.
Yes, Moat Cailin. Yes, Moat Cailin. Yeah. The first part is easy. The Umber just agree to those terms. First of all, Mors isn't going to be able to identify Mance's skull from any other skull, so just hand him a skull and say this was Mance's. So that part's pretty easy.
And they came up with a plan for avoiding the Umbers fighting each other, which was to put them on opposite sides of the field, so they wouldn't be.
Yes, exactly, right. But I wondered, has Melisandre seen nothing in the Flames about the issues with this plan of attacking the Dreadfort? She didn't see, I foresee some serious problems here. I would not recommend doing this.
Maybe that's why she was making a plan for staying in Castle Black.
That's right.
Knock yourselves out. I ain't going.
But so Stannis mentions that he got the details that the castle, the Dreadfort, was so lightly garrisoned from Arnulf Karstark, who we saw dining with Ramsay and Hother Umber, not Mors, but his brother Hother. And so, are we sure that Arnulf is truly Stannis' man and he's feeding him legitimate info?
Good point.
It goes one of two ways. Either Arnulf is at the Dreadfort spying for Stannis, or he's Bolton's man trying to lead Stannis into a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the Lannisters have the new Lord and his great-nephew, Haryon Karstark. So,
yeah,
that complicates things as well. you wouldn't think he would side with Stannis when his great nephew and his liege lord is held by the other side.
Yeah, that's a very clever trap if that's what's being played on them. Like there's only 50 people there. There's 500 of them, and they're armed to the teeth.
Exactly. That would be one way to really hurt, possibly bring an end to Stannis's efforts here.
Jon, when pitching the idea of going to the Mountain Clans, mentions King Daeron's ride to Dorne, how he brought Dorne into the Seven Kingdoms. It's very clever of Jon, because Stannis is a bit of a sucker for the old legend making, Yeah. And Stannis actually complains about the story. He's like, it wasn't anything to do with Daeron going on the goat paths that brought Dorne into the kingdoms. It was the fleets. Yeah, right. It was. Yeah, that's what caused. He's like, the whole story's just apocryphal, but also you've pushed the right buttons, because Stannis likes that kind of thing. He can't help himself. Yeah, moth to a flame.
And Jon also feels that he and the Night's Watch are being drawn more into the War of the Realm each day. Pretty much every time he interacts with the king is pulling him another few feet closer into this
I will war. Say he can salve his conscience by realizing he's going to have to arm those wildlings anyway. Whether they go or stay, he's going to arm them.
Well, that's true, because he wants them. At first it's like, why does he keep pushing to keep the wildlings? There are more mouths to feed. But he needs, as we mentioned, garrisons for his castles that he wants to refurbish. Yeah. And so he needs these people, in which case he's going to have to arm them and trust them to go off to castles where he's not watching them.
Yeah. It's a pretty rough job. Can you imagine if Rattleshirt gets given 50 wildlings and is like told to go to some poxy castle along the wall, which, all right, first 2 orders of business. 1, rebuild the place because it's complete derelict. And 2, stock up for a very long winter. We've got nothing to offer, but
right.
You might want to plant some turnips.
Yeah. Get to turnip planting quickly.
Yeah. Ironborn, right? So you can sow then. That's good.
Right. Yeah, but Jon's thought is, food and shelter is one thing, and that you can argue for Stannis' help with defeating the wildlings, but swords and armor for battle against foes that aren't the other wildlings or others from beyond, the others from beyond the wall, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Stannis makes Jon reject the offer of being Lord of Winterfell one more time, just because he likes to salt that particular wound over and over again. And by the way, here's Val. Look how pretty she is.
Did you see Val this morning? She looked radiant. She would look wonderful as the Lady of Winterfell alongside Jon Stark. It can't be easy for him to turn it down again, especially with talk of making Arnulf Karstark or Massier Horp Lord of the...
I will say, that kind of thing, though, gets easier with repetition. Like, because I'm going to England to watch this soccer match, I said to Lucas, hey, do you want to come to England? He was like, oh, maybe. And I said, I think it's getting real. Do you want to come? He was like, And I was like, Lucas, do you want to come? I'm going to buy it. He said, no.
Oh.
It got easier and easier with each repetition.
Right.
But finally, he was like, I'm not even going to pretend I care about your feelings anymore. No, I don't want to go.
Yeah, I can see that. I see how that works. But Stannis pretty much considers Davos to have been lost in the storms and kind of moving on without him.
Stop that crying, Devon.
Yeah, that's right. Stop that. I totally overlooked the fact that Devon was in the room when he said that. I get that Stannis is in a position to just, sit and mourn the loss of his hand of the king and good friend. He might have wanted to say, hey, Devon, could you run and get me a snack or something? Before he says that.
Hey, orphan boy, can you just... Oh, no, wait. Never mind.
We were with Davos recently, and he strongly considered just going home. And it seems he might have been able to just sneak away. And unless Stannis actually goes all the way and wins the Iron Throne, Stavros would have probably been all right, sitting in the castle with his feet up.
Yeah. So Jon manages to redirect him, and I think generally this plan is good because he's going to get some strong fighters if he can woo the mountain clans, and he's going to have to woo them, not command them. But this does take him in the direction of Deepwood Motte, not the direction of the Dreadfort. Deepwood Motte is definitely a better target for him with the strength that he has. He will eliminate the Ironborn there, which is good. That's the kind of thing that's going to get you brownie points in the north. But the Ironborn aren't his threat. The Boltons are. So that's the one downside of this plan that makes me sort of slightly surprised that Stannis agreed to it. Because
I think for one thing, he's looking at those 3,000 mounted fighters as a big win.
True.
But also, I think he's hoping to earn some of the other northern houses to his side. If he shows, look, I took care of the wildlings in the north. I took care of the Ironborn in one of your castles. I'm here for you. What are the Boltons doing?
You know what would be an interesting follow-up step to that? It would be to garrison Deepwood Motte to keep the Ironborn away, and then march on Winterfell and perhaps rebuild Winterfell.
Yeah.
Make that your sort of like base of operations.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. Although Jon does mention that the 3,000 fighters from the mountain clans, most of them sling rocks or use wooden staffs, which wouldn't hold up great against mounted knights in full armor.
Be useful to have the walls of Winterfell between.
Yes, it would.
Throwing rocks from there is good, yeah.
But Jon's pretty confident. It seems like if Stannis does the things that Jon suggests he does, that he will, if he treats them with respect, he will win their support. I mean, Jon did not like say, I think you've got a chance. He said, you will do them a great respect. No king has visited them since Torrhen Stark bent the knee. Right. They will be honored by your presence. You will win them if you go there. Yeah. And it makes some sense. They dislike the Ironborn, the walls especially, because they are near the coast and they deal with the Ironborn. So surely they'd like to see them out of the north.
Yeah. I will say, just in passing, that if Jon is so completely aware of the vulnerability of Deepwood Motte to surprise attack, he might have mentioned it to the owners of Deepwood Motte before they got sacked by the Ironborn, Because he does say, you can sneak up on that place. It's a piece of cake. Don't worry about it.
I thought about that. He said that exactly. He's like, it's heavy in the forest. It was deep in the forest. I'm trying to say it's deep in a heavy forest. Third time's the charm there. And that you could basically be on the castle before they know it. And I thought, that feels like a bit of a flaw in the defenses of Deepwood Motte. Not only is it wooden, but it's also basically the trees go right up to the walls. And, speaking of that, last we saw, Asha Greyjoy had taken Deepwood Motte and taken Robert Glover's family to the Iron Islands. We've had no word of her since. Possibly she is returned to the castle. Maybe she is the Ironborn that is holding the castle.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. But so Melisandre, as we mentioned, plans to stay at Castle Black. We have any feeling for why this is? I mean, again, maybe because she saw the debacle of the Dreadfort looming in the flames and didn't want any part of that.
Maybe. Well, I will say this. The last time Stannis went into battle without her went disastrously on the Blackwater.
That's true. Yeah.
So, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the greatest idea to leave her behind, but maybe she is thinking, I am here in Westeros to fight the Great Other, and the Great Other is on the other side of this wall. I'm not leaving this wall.
Right. So, maybe we're misjudging Melisandre. Maybe that is her prime motivation here. The whole Azor Ahai trickery is just a step on the road to this. She's going to be the savior of the realm by defending the wall.
Maybe that's why she won't leave. Yeah. But who else is staying behind are the wildlings, at Jon's behest. He could have gotten rid of a large group of mouths to feed and he had to convince Stannis to leave them behind. It's a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, but as we said, he needs to garrison those castles.
Right.
He wants to do it. He can't afford to get rid of all of these fighters. And whichever fighters you keep, you're going to have to feed some mouths,
Yeah. Once Stannis and the army leaves, Stannis' army, obviously, the wildlings are going to outnumber the Night's Watch significantly. And I wonder if without Stannis and his knights, is there concern of a wildling uprising against the Brothers of the Night's Watch?
It's always going to be a concern. But the thing is, I think the wildlings believe in this cause, and that's why they might not. Maybe if they fight back the Great Other, then they might be like, now's our chance.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But until they fight back the Great Other, I think they're going to stay loyal to the cause.
Yeah, but and what they wanted was south of the wall to get away from the others, and now they are. So maybe it's in their best interest to support the Night's Watch to preventing the others from getting across the wall.
All right, it is time for some spoilers. If you want to get the spoilers, join us at the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, and you'll get to hear what we talk about next. That's excellent spoilers. Thank you. All right, to background. What you got for us?
All right, well, Stannis wants to take a page from his brother Robert's book, not that Robert ever read a book, as Stannis points out, and attack his enemies before they can attack him. And the page he's likely referring to in Robert's book is the battle at Summerhall. Early on in Robert's rebellion, several Stormlords did not back Robert in his rebellion against Mad King Aerys. Lords Catherine, Fell, and Grandison were three such lords, and they planned to meet at the ruined castle of Summerhall, join forces there, and then ride on Robert at Storm's End. However, Robert caught wind of the plan and was the first on the scene. As each army arrived, Robert's force defeated them one by one, winning 3 battles in a single day, and Robert then took the lords of the houses captive and managed to flip them to actually become loyal allies. Well, he took 2 of the 3 lords captive. Lord Fell was killed by Robert in single combat during the battle, but he did take his son, nicknamed Silveraxe, who be the new Lord Fell, captive. Adding these lords and their men to his cause, he quickly gained the support of the remaining Stormlord holdouts. Having shored up the Stormlands, it allowed Robert to confidently march on the Reach without fearing for enemies at his rear.
Yeah. I see the similarity. See where you might reference this, for sure.
Right.
Comparison with the television show, you're not going to see the similarity here because it's all over the place. Melisandre was not left at the wall in the TV show. I'm not sure that's going to happen in the book, but that's certainly the impression we're being given here, that she's going to stay behind at the wall.
Right.
There's no plan to take the Dreadfort. There's no alternative attack on Deepwood Motte. There's no real sense of the Boltons pincering Mackelly from north and south. They're just kind of hanging around. So less talk of a Northern Alliance, more just sort of like a hanging around in a quagmire of we don't have enough food, nothing's really happening. So I think the book's got the edge here in terms of sort of narrative drive. Although it lacks a little bit of that, if you ask me, but there we are. All right, I've been waiting for this all day. Pedantry Corner, this is a doozy. All right, so one of the things that Bowen Marsh says when he's under the wall is that we ran out of limes a year ago. Okay, there's the dereliction of duty. There's no excuse for that. If you need limes, and honestly, limes are a bit fancy, but if you need limes, get them. Arrange for them to be brought. Don't run out a year before the winter starts. That's not very useful.
Right.
Okay,
but he's had a year. You're right. He's had a year to figure this out.
To replenish the lost limes. But that's not even the pedantry. All right, Bowen Marsh, that's dereliction of duty. The pedantry is this. What drink is Devon serving Stannis in Stannis' solar?
I knew you were. As soon as I saw citrus, I knew you were going with this. Yes,
he was serving
lemon water.
Lemon water. It's like, wait a minute. Did you just use it for all the limes before you moved on to the lemons?
We ran out of limes a year ago, but we've got at least 4 years worth of lemons. Did I mention that?
I was like, that's crazy. So there you go.
I knew it as soon as I saw citrus. I knew where you were going with that. Because he offered Robert John lemon water when he came to his solar.
Yep.
And it wasn't one lemon; it said lemons.
Yeah, they've got lemons to be just squeezing in water for no apparent reason.
Right.
But not a lime in sight.
That's right. That's the problem. You can't make lemon lime. You can't make Sprite.
All right, news and notes. This one's exciting.
Yeah, so, well, to celebrate the start of summer, in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, we're reopening our GOH merch site for a time.
Nice.
So now's your chance to go get your GOH t-shirts and look good while you strut your stuff this summer. And for those in the Southern Hemisphere, you can stock up on our hoodies and sweatshirts to make it through the winter months in style. Just visit our store, ghostofharrenhal.threadless.com, and stock up.
I tell you what, that would be useful. I need a couple of Ghosts of Harrenhal t-shirts for the beach, so that when I see someone reading one of the books, I can broach the subject, not let him get away having never said a word to him.
I had the first person ask me what Ghosts of Harrenhal was. I was at Trader Joe's, which is a grocery store here, and I was wearing my one of my Ghosts of Harrenhal t-shirts, and the person checking us out said, "What's the Ghosts of Harrenhal?" And I started to explain it's a podcast. Are you familiar with the Song of Ice and Fire, the books behind Game of Thrones and all that? And Stacy goes, "It's his podcast." And I was like, I was going to omit that part for the time, unless she showed interest.
And he just won the lottery as well.
So, so the shirts really do have an impact, I guess.
Exciting. Yeah. All right. And you dug up a review from Apple Podcasts Australia from Dave6745328, which I hope that's not your phone number, Dave, because we've just announced it to the world.
We'll go with Dave for here on.
Entitled "A Great Friend to a Shift Worker." I have to say, I always think of all Australians as being shift workers because they work in the middle of the night, but I suppose you have shift workers there too.
Yes, all right.
A very thorough and intelligent take on the Song of Ice and Fire series. An enormous undertaking doing a chapter-by-chapter review, and it's done with wit, humour, an occasional bout of grandiosity from Simon. Occasional? That's a weekly event. Hats off to you both. Great work. Well, thank you, Dave. That's very kind.
Yes, thank you.
Guilty as charged on the grandiosity.
Yes. And I do apologize for how long it's taken for me to discover this review and read it out. So better late than never, I guess.
All right, let's conclude this one. Jon does a little bit of manipulation. He rids himself of Stannis and Stannis' hungry men. He swells his own ranks with the wildlings, those are the ones he would choose of the people he's recently inherited.
Right.
They appreciate what they're going to face. Still not sure how he's going to feed them, but I think giving them license to hunt in the gift feels like a logical first step. You know, these people can fend for themselves. Give them the license to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's only 1,000. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many people it takes to hunt for 1,000 people to eat.
Yeah, I wish I knew what the exact number was. We probably learned it in the chapter when they came through the wall. And I can't remember off the top of my head what
it feels like 1,000 is the order of magnitude to me. But you see, it feels like 50 men out hunting could feed 1,000.
Yeah, as long as there's enough game to.
Right, but I mean, this is kind of wild territory. There should be plenty of it, you'd think.
You would think, as long as you stay in the gift and the new gift, not
right, and they're not going to go that far because they're going to drag it back, you know.
Well, true, yeah.
So it's just it's just 50 men hunting. That doesn't have to cover that much ground. It's not like you need to go up into the mountains and annoy the mountain clans. It's not like you have to go over into the Umber's territory to steal from them. Just stay in the gift.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
It seems possible. It just, I guess part of it is how much do you trust them with weapons? But if you're going to trust them loose with weapons to go man your castles, then you're going to have to trust them, you know? At some point, you're just going to have to trust them. You let them through.
Exactly.
Now you got to trust them.
Exactly.
But half of House Umber is still a solid win for Stannis. I know it's not the whole House Umber, but it's half, and that's, they're a respected house in the north.
Yeah. But if your theory is right, then they're not really fighting for Stannis. They are trying to stay alive until they can see which way the wind is blowing, and then they're going to decide. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it could be.
Which is also true of the Boltons. I mean, in the sense that the Umbers haven't declared for the Boltons either. Half of House Umber is solid for the Boltons, except they too are not going to really fight for them. They're going to wait to see the way the wind is blowing.
Yeah, it could be the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully Stannis will add a bunch more supporters in the mountain clans. If he, one thing, Stannis must really excel at is wooing and charming. That's gotta be a strong suit, right?
But the mountain clans, they might see him as like wildly charismatic and capricious in his moods.
Maybe. Is Jon being sincere about mountain clan support? It sounds awfully good, and if I were Stannis, I would worry, is this too good to be true, or is he just trying to get me out of his hair?
Why don't you and all your hungry knights just ride off into those mountains and see what you can find? Yeah.
I promise there's real friendly folk up there. Yeah. Be ready for some feasts. Little does he know, the feasts are them being eaten.
And once you've got them on your side, there's a Motte and Bailey castle. You could take that in a heartbeat. It's a terrible place. I don't know why they set it up the way they did. Stannis needs a better small council with fewer Queen's men and more King's men. That's what he does.
Yes,
for sure.
Sir Godry is an idiot blowhard, and most of the others are just about as bad as he is.
Yeah. Melisandre staying behind, is that a good idea? Might be a good idea for Jon. I'm thinking Melisandre might be a love interest potentially. We know Jon's a little fungible on those vows of his.
He likes those redheads.
And he likes the redheads, true.
He did. I think his thought was he couldn't think of much less he would have wanted to hear than that she was staying behind. So at least at first he's not loving the idea. But is it a good idea for Stannis to march off without her? Seems like she's a useful, member of his team.
But maybe by following Jon's advice, he's limited his martial action to something that he can actually achieve.
Yeah.
Even without her help.
Maybe, yeah.
All right, next week we're back to Essos to see how Tyrion's river cruise is progressing. In the meantime, we're back to 4. You did this on purpose.
There's 4. That's right.
We're back to 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review like Dave from Australia did. You could buy us a cup of our gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and the higher tiers get you the spoilers. You could make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com. And for the start of the summer, you can stock up on some Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise at our store, ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode show notes. Please just keep in mind we have no means of responding to you, but we do enjoy reading, especially when you say nice things about us. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.